literally thunderstorming while I'm trying to record this. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Fiction TV. So today we're going to talk about Shutter Island. Shutter Island was directed by Martin Scorsese and written by Leita Kalogridis, and it is based off the novel by Dennis Hare. It's about 2 hours and 19 minutes. It's rated R. It came out in 2010, and it is a thriller mystery genre. So it stars this guy, Teddy Daniels. He is in an asylum, but he thinks that he's a detective working on this case with his partner, and he comes to uncover the truth that not only am I not who I think I am, but also I've been running from my problems and my trauma that has been haunting me throughout this entire scene, throughout this entire movie. And we learn what his trauma is and what's been going on, and how this whole time he's been pretty much playing a game on himself and trapped in his own mind. Let's talk about this film. First off, I've seen this film a couple times. Not gonna hold you, not gonna lie. Also, this film is quite long, so I would say if you're going to watch this, just pace yourself and be ready. And I will also say that this is basically going to be spoilers. I mean, this movie came out in 2010, so if you haven't seen it by now, then it's like you probably either won't see it or you don't want to see it, or maybe you just haven't seen it. But like, I'm gonna spoil it. This is gonna be me talking about characters, imagery, visuals, symbolism, and give a little rundown on the plot. So let's start. So, as I rewatched this, I did notice the subtle hints they were giving Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Teddy Daniels. So, I think it's so ironic that it's raining right now, how it was in the movie, and I just finished watching it. Like, are we on an island? We just might be. Okay, so first we have the intro scene. The intro scene, we have Teddy Daniels, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and we have Chuck, played by Mark Ruffalo. They're on this boat. They're on their way to the island called Shutter Island, the title. But they're on their way to this island, and the first thing I noticed about this was the visuals. I do want to say I noticed that the visual backgrounds were like flat and the clouds weren't moving, so of course it was not a real background, and I assume that the body of water is probably green screen, or if there's like, because sometimes also what they'll do, they'll have like a pool of water and everything else would just kind of get fitted into the scene. So in this case, that's what I assume. Then we move on from the visuals to their costume design. Their costume was like old-fashioned, kind of Western-looking suits, and I enjoyed the costume design. I feel like it went with this whole like fictional story of them being detectives and in this role. Next is the details. Teddy actually checks his pockets and he's like, like, I thought I had like cigarettes in my coat or something. I thought I had cigarettes on me, like in my pocket. Partners like, well, government officials, they steal stuff. And that of course was a subtle hint. It also says, right now, Marshall, we all are. Which is hinting at, of course we all are, because he knows who he is. Another subtle hint was the doctor. John Cowley, played by Ben Kingsley. As Teddy Daniels is looking at the photographs, he says, yes, someone even drowned, or the patient even drowned. Something on the lines of drowning, but we know why he mentioned the drowning thing, because of Teddy Daniels. Because we're just gonna try to ignore that. Because of Teddy Daniels' true identity and because of his past. So he was trying to give him subtle hints throughout this entire thing. Then of course we have to talk about the music throughout this whole thing. That music was just like kind of cryptic in a way, and it was like dun dun dun, like the violin that was playing, everything kind of went well together. Like, the music just kind of sold all of the scenes that were really having something about to happen and getting intense. Another thing that I like was the details in this. The details with the subtitle hints, how they conducted this entire experiment with this lady who's supposed to be Rachel, which is Rachel, the name of his daughter. And they say that, yeah, Rachel, she drowned her kids. She thinks her husband's still alive, and it's the same exact story with him. And they're basically trying to trigger him, trying to remind him, trying to get him to remember, like, this is really about you, and this stuff actually isn't even really real. And I loved how they did that with this lady, with this nurse, with this character. How he really took the role of being, like, this investigator. He thought, like, he was a U.S. Marshal, which he was, but in this case, currently he thought that he was this U.S. Marshal, and I thought it was so good. He says that Rachel thinks that everybody is just the milkman, her neighbors, and just like Rachel in this story that they're telling him, Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Teddy, thinks that he's a U.S. Marshal and he's solving a mystery right now with his partner, and that he's not really, you know, who he truly is. Also, a lot of other details that I noticed is how the body language of the people who worked there were. A lot of the nurses, a lot of the workers, and the restrainers, a lot of the people who restrained the patients, they were tense. Anytime that made an outburst or they saw him like looking a little like he's about to do something, they either were like ready or they had their hand balled up. The one worker you can see in that scene where Daniels kind of comes up to one of the other workers' face and he says something on the lines of like, tell us the truth. And that one guy just like has his hand balled up and he's ready. You could always see like when he was searching behind the bed and he found the note, you could see how the guard was kind of like poised in a way that was like, okay, if something happens, we know. And like even with the doctors, anytime he was talking to them, like the older doctor with the glasses, he would get fearful or jumpy, or he would know like at any given moment he could pop off. And of course there's the clever thing that they did, that whole message, Law 467, and what they did with the 4 names. I mean, that was brilliant, how the 4 names were really like the names, all his names, and then all of his wife's names, just different ways, and 67, him being the 67 patient, like genius. Then we get this scene with the doctor Jeremiah, played by Max von Sydow, and he calls Daniels and his partner men of violence, and then it automatically goes to like this flashback. And we see snow falling and children holding on to like this barbed wire. The scenes with the papers falling and they're soiled in blood with dead bodies. And we see the shot-faced man reaching for the gun. We got Hitler in the background, and you have to assume that they were soldiers killing Nazis, and it brings up the question of like, was this justified? And it's like, no, because they still killed people. And you could tell that that guilt was eating him alive, literally. So that scene causes a flashback, and he sees his wife, and the camera zooms in on his face. Now you can see the hurt, the pain, the agony. His eyes are red and puffy, and then the burntness from the house falls down. It's kind of like rain, but burnt fire, crisp. That scene really made me think about the colors that they use, how she was draped in like this bright green colors in the background, and her side was more bright and alive, and his side was kind of brown and I'm guessing dull. If you mix the colors of like yellow and green, you get brown. And if you mix, well, I believe yellow, green, and blue are brown, so that could be some sort of symbolism with him, her. That's why those colors were like shared. That was my guess. Then we learned that he cannot let go. His hands are soiled in water, before he wakes up, his hands are soiled in water. Now I assumed while watching this that because this is a island and this is their own island, away from people and away from other places, and the fact that it was raining at a certain point and the thunderstorm was crazy at a certain point in the film, I assumed that this was because of Teddy Daniels. This was because of Leonardo DiCaprio's character. This was because he was supposed to solve this whole thing. That's why there was a hurricane, and it was like water everywhere and things were flooding. Once he came from the rock, everything was kind of sunny and shiny. Once he got in the car with that officer guy, the weather changed really quickly. That was my assumption. And also when him and his partner Chuck were in that, was it a church or something? I'm not sure what it was. But they were in that place. After he had said something, the doors just kind of swung open, like magically. Of course, this is an island, so I assume it's, you know, they can control the weather. They can control lots of things. It's like an experimental island. So yeah. Another thing that I found that was really interesting was the patients, different types of patients that they had. They had the one guy who was like, he's kind of a sexual deviant. Then they had the woman who is like, she seemed normal and regular in comparison to that guy and everyone else. I just thought it was interesting how they showed different characters, like the different dynamics of the inmates and the characters, even though I'm not sure if they really were inmates and they were just working for them, because that end part they were like giggling and stuff. Another visual detail that I thought was really very cool, even though it was pretty ruthless. It was pretty ruthless, but it also was like really good and really cool, was the flashback scene where Teddy was like shooting everybody. Teddy, who's really Andrew, but we haven't gotten to that part. Teddy, he was shooting everybody, and it showed like this range of just groups of people just getting shot up and killed. And it really showed you what he had to do and why he feels the way he feels, because he killed so many people. Like all those people, he just ran down the line and just started shooting up and killing everybody. I mean, how the camera went down that scene, that massacre, was great. Next we had the scene where Marshall kind of reveals why he actually came here and how he's trying to investigate like what's really going on. I really liked how they played on that after that part. After that part was revealed, they just like played on it after that. It was like, okay, now I know what's up. This is what I think is going on. So now the story kind of played on what he thought and trying to unlock and undiscover everything. It was also revealed to us what actually was going on when Teddy kind of interrupted that whole all the professionals were like sitting at the table and Teddy came in and one of them was like, oh yeah, the number 4 thing. Yeah, I like that. But Teddy didn't realize that they were talking about that, which was a clue for the audience for us to be like, all right, yeah, there's something else going on. Like, this is shady. But we didn't know exactly what it was until the end, especially if this was your first time watching it. Rewatching the second time, I realized, oh, I didn't even realize that that was mentioned. Another thing I noticed was the scene where his wife comes through that red door and it signifies her death. She's dead. It's something that he can't let go. That red, that death of his wife and everything that comes with her, because the death of his wife means the death of his children, and death of his children means what she did, and what she did means what he had to do to her because of what she did. Then one of my favorite parts is when he meets George in Ward C. And the truth basically comes out, and George is like, man, all of this is about you. You are a rat in a maze right now. Like, if you don't let go, you need to let go of her. And if you don't let go, you're basically going to be trapped here and stuck here forever. The reason this part is one of my favorites is because it really shows that vulnerability between those two characters. And it really is truly relatable. Like, any person can relate to that, like losing somebody and not being able to let them go, kind of being in your own way in situations like that, and in just situations in life. Like, you a lot of times are in your own way, and in this case he was in his own way. If he would have just let go, he could have moved on and better things could have possibly happened for him. But because he couldn't let go of that, and because he couldn't face the truth of the things that he did, it was just like, you know, we saw what happened at the end. He takes his fate in the end. It just really shows that humane side of these characters, as well as when the doctor talked about, well, they're patients, they're not criminals, because Teddy kept saying, these are criminals, look at them, look at what they're doing, not realizing until later on all the things that he did, and he's calling these people criminals, but he himself is a criminal. Whereas, you know, the doctor is trying to look at it in a different light and be like, well, they're patients, they're human, just like you, they make mistakes just like you. And I thought that was, it was a message. Another symbolic scene was, I thought that was really cool when they had the rats coming out of like the hole, because he's a rat in a maze, and it's just like bunch of rats just everywhere, just crawling everywhere, and I was like, oh my god, ugh. But I thought it was really cool that they did that because it correlated to what George said about him. Again, like I said, they played on his whole investigative thing, and he kind of conjured up this woman who was in the cave. Tells him, like, you know, they've been doing experiments, and you've been smoking the cigarettes they've been giving you, you've been doing this, you've been doing that. They kind of, you know, tricked you. And the thing about that scene is, like, even though we see what happens in the end, it plays on this kind of trick, even as the person that's watching it, because you're thinking, what if this is true, that what she's saying, it's super convincing. And then when you hear what the doctor says, you're like, okay, well, it's made up. But also that part of you in that moment is just like, okay, so this is true. Everything that she's saying, she's talking about Korean experiments and conspiracy theories. So then we find out the truth. We learned that he is his 67th patient, and the doctor was like, you could have blown the lid off this place, but you also didn't read the documents as to what you're doing here and all this stuff. And I'm just like, what? When I first watched this, I knew that it was something at the end, but I didn't know it was this. Like, it was genius. It was genius. This scene right here where he learns the truth and the doctor is telling him the truth, then it goes into that flashback scene of his wife and he walks into the house. This is another one of the best scenes. I mean, it's in the intro of my little song to my channel, so this is one of the best scenes. He walks into his wife, he sees her, she's sitting on the swing bench, she's chilling. He walks up to her and he's like, you know, baby, honey. He's like, honey, why are you all wet? And she's like laughing, like hysterically. She's like giggling like there's nothing wrong. She's completely out of it, delusional. She's completely just taken out of reality at this point. And that scene where he sees his kids floating and he's like, oh my god, and he like runs into the water and gets his kids, and his emotion in that scene where he sees his daughter, he tries to give her mouth to mouth, and he's just crying in agony. His face is red, he's in tears. He goes to his other children, he tries to pick them up, he screams at the top of his lungs and looked up to the ceiling like, man, like, he deserved an Oscar after that. Like, I don't know when he got his Oscar, but like after that, like that, dude deserves like every award because it was fire. I mean, it was good. I mean, he hit the ugly cry so well. When you can hit the ugly cry so well, it's just like you sold it. Another really good scene is when he's sitting up front of the place on the steps next to his partner, Chuck, who is actually, come to find out, his psychiatrist, who's been a psychiatrist for 2 years. And he says, you know, this place makes me wonder, which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? And you have to come to assume that he's well aware. He's well aware. He didn't go backwards. He's well aware of what's going on now and what's happening. He knows his fate. And at this point, he would rather get a lobotomy or, you know, die at this point than to come to terms with him being a monster, with him being a murderer. And the doctor, man, the doctor looked so like sad. He looked kind of heartbroken. He looked heartbroken because I feel like he did really want to help him, and when the other doctor kind of went to him like that, he just turned around and he just looked like he looked like he wanted to cry. I was like, poor guy. But yeah, then it ends with a scene, a final shot of the lighthouse, and I came to assume that he got the lobotomy, the light was on, they had him in there, like that's what that was. Yeah, I assumed that he was experimented on, but overall this is a great, the best, one of the best films. I'd recommend. I think this film is genius. I love it. It's just so many genius things that they put into this. I mean, this is a book. When I was watching it, I was like, this has to be a book because it's so detailed and so intricate that there's no way this isn't a book. And then I found out later, after finishing the movie, that it's a book. And like I said, this movie is 2 hours long, so you definitely want to be prepared to watch this and pace yourself. It's very interesting the whole way through. You're with him, you're investigating this with him, you're trying to figure this all out. Of course, if you've watched this and you've gotten the spoiler, but if you want to watch it again, I definitely recommend it to watch it again. If you haven't seen it and you still watch the spoiler, then go watch it, go check it out. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to this channel, hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to comment below and tell me what you think about this movie. Do you like it? How do you feel about Leonardo DiCaprio? I think he's just a great actor. Hit the notification bell before you go so you can get notified for videos. Although I have put up a schedule now for when I'm going to be posting videos. So it's going to be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So no matter what time of that day, it's going to be posted. So if it's not posted in the, I say, early morning or afternoon, it's going to be posted at later on or the evening. So just be sure to know that I'm always going to be posting on those days, no matter what time it is throughout the day. I'm trying to get to earlier times so they can be posted early in the morning. We haven't gotten to that. But yeah, I do have a new schedule up, and I will see you all next time. Before you go, be sure to get you a copy of my book, Rain. If you like this film, you would definitely be interested in this book. It is about kids in a psych ward who have been living there for so long. They've been confined to this life. They get a new counselor. He decides that he's going to help them get out. He learns that these kids have abilities, and they're not just crazy, that they're being experimented on and they're being tortured, and that a lot of trauma has been going on in their lives. There are flashbacks just like this movie. It literally correlates with the movie, and I've been reading chapters of this book, so if you want to check out that, you can go to Netflix Mortel Review and start from there. That's where I started reading this from chapter 1, and you can go from there up until now, and I will continue to read for those who want to hear the rest, because we have like a couple of pages left. It's coming down to the nitty-gritty. So if you would like a copy of this book, you can hit the link in the description box below and go to Amazon, or you can actually hit up this email and get added to the email list and get percentage off this book. So yeah, let's start. Now, last we checked, Sam was actually telling John Smith about what was really going on, and she was explaining that her mother met this professor, and the professor is actually Joe's father. Chapter 16. My mother had this professor. He was obsessed with her. One day, when he came over our house, I still remember the way he looked at me with a frozen glare full of amazement and excitement, as if I was some exotic wild creature he had never seen before. It made me feel so odd. I told my mother how uncomfortable I felt in his presence. She just said, "You're being paranoid. Don't worry, he's fine." He'd come over, stare at me, and smolder his way into our lives. He and my mother had gotten closer. Joe and I eventually became really close too, like a big brother and sister to each other. Around the time his mother was very sick. Leon said Joseph's mother killed herself due to suicide. She had cancer. She suffered severely, but no one would allow her to let go, so she did it herself, with a gun, in her room. There was blood everywhere. Oh, it was so graphic. All over the sheets. She made them watch. She made her kids watch as she took the cold point of the gun to her skull, blowing a hole straight through. Oh my God. I thought I had a tragic life. My face tightens. She was mentally ill as well. That's where Joe obtained the gene from. It was from her. As well as Matt. And, well, her voice trails. The anger, aggressive gene, and the lifetime trauma. One day, my mom went somewhere. I think to the store, and had Matt watching Joe and I. Jake was with his grandmother a lot at the time. She had custody of Jake because he was the less damaged one. But Joe was happy about that. He used to tell me stories about Matt's torturing. He would torture him for hours to see how long he could hold his hands tied up to the ceiling fan while it moved. He'd choke him till he passed out or vomited, like it was a sick game. He'd make him sit in it for days. He despised him because deep down he hated himself for what happened to his wife and his children. He took it out on Joe. It wasn't his fault. He was just a child. They all were. Jake was a baby. Leon was a teenager. But Joe, he resembles her. But it wasn't just that. He was always jealous of Joe. Why? I don't know. It's because every woman he's ever loved had loved Joe more. His wife and you. She continues. He caught us in the room. We weren't doing anything wrong, but he claimed Joe was supposed to wash his car. He told him to do so, but Joe refused. He said he wasn't going to leave me with him. They argued, and Matt was afraid of Joe that day. I saw it in his eyes. the utter terror. Eventually, Joe stopped coming over, but Matt didn't, though. He talked to me whenever my mom wasn't around. He'd tell me how beautiful and special I was, and how he wishes he could take me with him. He even tried to touch me, except when he did, he was shocked. Like that day I met you. Yeah. So, how'd you end up here? One day, I went back to my mom's to meet my new baby brother, Micah, for the first time. When I was old enough, I moved in with my older brother, Mark. Anyways, when I walked inside, there were people there wearing suits, just looking at me like they knew I was coming. She shakes her head. My mom would tell me I never had a dad. It's because I inherited whatever it is that she has, and she told Matt about it. Allowing them to take me away. So gullible. He told her he was going to fix me, and she could visit whenever, but she never did. And there I was in that strange place, alone. Her tone softens. She never visited? After she put you in there? Well, it's because she killed herself. I turn away. What? Why? It was different from Joe's mom, though, because mine slit her throat and wrist, so they used that story as my own. They said that I tried to kill myself the same way. Every day Matthew would come in to ask, "So, can you do it? Do you have the gift?" He would have a puzzled expression like, "I thought you were all extinct." Long ago, there was said to have been a tribe of women who lived on this secret island off the coast somewhere. They could reproduce on their own, choosing the sex of their babies even. What? That's impossible. Trust me, I thought it was crazy when I heard about it, until it happened. I don't know how, but somehow I was like triggered. Joe showed up after you, correct? Yeah. Then what? Kale, Tracy, the others? She pauses. Neo. There was another 2, actually. There were 2 Neos before the one you've met. One was premature, and it died fast. It couldn't survive, I think, due to the environment. The next one happened once Joe arrived. We had another doctor there named L. He'd allow Joe and I to interact more. Soon he discovered it was how the baby thrived, off our energy. So, what happened? Did he kill? No. Neo hung herself. Wait. So you're telling me a baby hung herself? Except she wasn't a baby. She had grown substantially fast. She knew that if she died, that I could come back. Because she would never be without me or everyone else. Hold on. I take a breath. So you're saying when she killed herself, she killed you as well? Neho dies and all of a sudden you're resurrected? I touch my temple, exhaling. I know it's crazy, but... Oh no, crazy is beyond what this sounds like. I mean, this is utter insanity. You creating a child without male sperm on your own, Neo just being born who suddenly morphs into a kid after a few days, hangs herself as a sacrifice to free you from this curse? Am I in a movie? I know how it sounds, but it's the truth. Joe couldn't believe what was happening, but I figured it out. I told him and Elle. If Elle was such a great guy, why was he helping Matt in the first place? Elle was like you when he arrived. He was young, ambitious, eager, and unaware of what was really going on. He didn't know. He thought it was helping us, but once he was in, he was in. I had learned how to do it. Eventually, I learned how to create life, like Neho, on my own, as well as and determine its survival rates. So, you created more. I created more. Except it wasn't more Neho. It was everyone else. No fucking way. No way. They have families. How could you possibly do that? How? How can you create... I mean, they have parents. Kale's mom, Tracy's dad. Not real. She lowers her head in shame. It's my fault. I know, but we started to get bored. We learned we couldn't kill ourselves, Joe and I. Well, I couldn't, and Joe wouldn't. Not after his mom. It scarred him. She rubs her arms, so I wanted to see if I could create others, and I did. But it went bad. Matt found out, so he had people come from the outside, his team. They changed everything. They took over and got rid of Elle. The names I had given, well, I hadn't given anyone names or given backstories. Eventually they were separated from me, so they couldn't remember who I was to them. They started to forget. Joe started getting worse. Everyone did. Her environment was being manipulated. It became hopeless. I started to despise them for not remembering, feeling helpless. What changed? What gave you hope? I reached to comfort her. Neo told me about you. She followed me around. I answer. Yeah, she smiles. How'd she know to trust me? I don't know, but look, I'll go with you to the building, but only if you agree to burn it. Of course, all of it. We'll burn it to the ground. And everyone in it. She whispers. That is the end. There are more chapters left. I will see you guys all next time. Peace out.